Slap your clams together till pearls fall out.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hi there, occultists. I'm Arthur, I guess. The soundboard demon had to take a vacation day, so they thawed me out, and I've been thinking about this since they put me in. I get to do an episode today. But joining me in studio are...
Sage Murray,
Leon Filger,
Ood Gallifrey,
Richard Bigley,
Lord Loki.
And I'm glad to have y'all here. I'm glad to be back.
We're glad to have you here too.
Yeah.
Yay.
You know, you're not as freezer burnt as I thought you'd be.
No, just the tips.
Can we all take a moment to pause and remember Ood's cousin who sold adhesives, Glued Gallifrey?
Rest in peace, Glued.
Rest in peace, Glued.
Glued.
Ood's horse cousin turned into glue.
Oh.
Gay people, homosexuals, queers. Do they live amongst you? Could they live in your fucking community? I sure hope they do. Gays are good shit.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about a pioneering gay. The first openly gay man to hold public office in California and an actual martyr for gay rights. Today we talk about Harvey Milk. It's a story of some successes, some heartbreak, shitty behavior on all sides, as Trump would say, and Twinkies. But before that, we need a little bit of poison.
So, what's your poison?
What's your poison?
Our poison today, unfortunately, requires a small amount of explanation because we have a mostly American audience.
This will make it past the localization committee, right?
I assume so. If you hear another voice come in and change the names here, you'll know why. Today for our poison, we simply have homo milk and Twinkies.
Yeah.
In Canada, homo milk is 3.25% milk. Homo is short for homogenized, not gay. Whereas in America, you call it whole milk.
Dumb name. It's a liquid. You can't have a hole in it.
This is the first Twinkie I've ever had in my life.
What?
Yep.
You've never had a Twinkie before?
Never had a Twinkie before, and it's pretty damn good.
So is
homo milk
kind of a joke about homosexuals
and the fact that his name was Milk.
Okay.
Homosexual Milk.
Yeah.
And the Twinkie, not only because of something we'll talk about in the episode, but also he was kind of a slight white dude. Thin.
So he's kind of a twink.
Yeah.
Eee. Wow, that's bad.
It's terrible.
It's delicious.
Kind of makes me want to kill someone. Anyway.
Fuck, that's sweet.
Ugh.
It tastes like metal on the corners of my tongue.
Oh,
feels
so
like
much sugar.
preservatives, you know.
Just wash it down with some milk.
It's delish.
I'm going to take this home and let my son eat it.
I remember as a kid, these used to be bigger. Now they're too small.
Yeah.
I like wagon wheels.
Yeah, wagon wheels are tiny now.
Yeah.
Didn't wagon wheels used to be filled with some sort of fruit, or you
They
could
had
get
jam.
them with some fruit filling? But like I can't see the fruit-filled wagon wheels these days.
I've never had a wagon wheel either.
Oh.
I honestly thought a Twinkie would be bigger than this, and I thought it would be less cake-like. Like, this is less dense than I thought it would be, but it's way sweeter.
I mean, yeah, that's Twinkies for you.
I think they have gotten smaller.
Should insert the clip from the Ghostbusters where the guy's like talking about the paranormal activity increasing in New York.
Well, let's say this Twinkie represents the normal amount of psychokinetic energy in the New York area. According to this morning's sample, it would be a Twinkie 35 feet long, weighing approximately 600 pounds.
That's a big Twinkie.
Okay, in 1974, 10 Twinkies weighed 15 ounces.
10 Twinkies was 425 grams. How many grams per Twinkie here?
202.
But there's 6. So
42 grams they used to be, and now they're 33.6.
That's that inflation, hey? They used to be bigger, okay.
Who would like to rate their Twink and Milkies?
Well, I mean, I've always been a milk boy. I always drank milk. That's why my bones are strong. I can fall down, not break anything. Go. I love my milk, so, 10 out of 10 on milk. As for the Twinkies, every time I eat them, I'm disappointed. Because, like, the idea of them is better than them. They're kind of like, they're fluffy and a little bit slimy. They're just a little bit slimy, which is weird for a cake. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I guess it's sweet and pleasant, but I don't know, I can't get past the texture.
I'm going to rate my milk out of milk, because this is this homo milk, this 3.7 something
3 1/4.
There you go. Is what I prefer to drink after I've had an incredibly hot pepper or like hot pepper sauce, because the fat content is the most soothing. So it's a good milk as far as milks go. The Twinkie was my first and my last.
I rate the homo milk disgusting out of I hate milk. And I rate the Twinkie out of it tastes like pure disgusting chemicals out of I had a bite and I'm giving the rest to my kid.
Rip your bones. I don't know.
I eat a lot of almonds, okay?
Those are high in calcium. You got it. But also magnesium.
I rate the milk out of got milk and does a body good.
Yeah.
That's what the slogan is.
With Joanne Hurt and Michael McLeod. Do.
No, that's definitely not the
That's Body Break.
And you got their names right. It's Hal McLeod.
Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod.
There we go. Hal Johnson or Joanne McLeod.
Do you ever still want to do the name, but you've forgotten both of their names?
Yeah,
exactly. I've been there.
I got Body Break in my head.
Body Break.
Body Break.
Body Break with Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod.
They're still going, by the way, making new videos.
All right.
Hal Johnson was famously fired earlier in his career as a newscaster for being black. He was on a news team where they already had one black guy doing sports, but they were only allowed one black guy, and so he got fired because he wasn't black enough.
Now he's Body Break Superman.
Yep.
Living the dream.
And as for the Twinkie, I like your description of it, where it's like, it seems like something that would be good in theory, but in practice, it's not all that great.
The milk was milk. It was not bad. The Twinkie, I was quite sad because it's not big anymore.
Twinkies are sad.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing.
Hostess, are you glad this is the general reaction to your product?
I don't know. Maybe Twinkies are like McDonald's as a kid, because like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I'm going to McDonald's. But when you're an adult, it's like, oh, I'm going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know, fuck, I'm going to need a Big Mac. It's going right to my thighs.
It does.
As political parades go, it was a little unusual. Harvey Milk on his way to City Hall to be sworn in as a supervisor in San Francisco. Many of his backers were in the parade, or watching it go by. At his side, his gay lover. Milk topped 12 candidates in his district to win election to the board that runs this city and county. There was a celebration on the steps of City Hall when he arrived. There is a high percentage of gays in this town, and they are a political force here. The mayor was on the steps of City Hall to meet Harvey Milk. The gay vote is courted by nearly every politician in San Francisco. Harvey Milk also wanted to make an introduction.
It is well known that I'm a gay person, and in this state, there is a law that says gay people cannot be married, but there is no law that says two human beings cannot love one another. I have a loved one. Unfortunately, he is too nervous to be here. He left.
If there is a core to Harvey Milk's support, it's along this street, Castro Street. This is a center for the homosexual community. But there were 4 gay candidates running in the election. To win, Milk had to get other support. He did. From the elderly, from environmentalists, labor. The firefighters union went door to door campaigning for him. And he picked up a lot of minority support.
If I'm fighting for the rights of gay people, and I am, that I must fight for the rights of all people, all the minorities, the senior citizens, the handicapped, the disenfranchised people, or I'm a hypocrite. And I'm a little bit too old to get into becoming a hypocrite.
He continues to try to prove that he's not just a representative of the gay community.
Here's Harvey. This is Thursday Night Live. In case you're wondering...
He goes into the neighborhoods of his district asking for opinions on the issues every night. He takes one night off every 2 weeks. All this for a salary of $9,500 a year. At 9 in the morning, he's on the bus heading for City Hall. He wants to improve the transportation system and get rid of cars in the downtown area. So he says if he didn't ride the bus, he'd be a phony. Harvey Milk says City Hall seems to have survived the election of the first gay official and that no earthquake has yet knocked it down. But it's obvious Milk intends to shake it up a bit. He made that clear in his first words on the job.
I will fight to represent my constituents. I will fight to represent the city and county of San Francisco. I will fight to give those people who had once walked away hope so that those people will walk back in. Thank you very much. The arguments are the same type of arguments that we heard generations ago about black people, before that about Jews, before that about Irish, and so forth. And history has proven that those arguments have basically come out of fear and myths. And once those minorities were accepted into the mainstream, they became assets. I think we can see the same thing.
Harvey Milk led a boring early life. He was born Harvey Bernard Milk, son of some Lithuanian Jews, raised in New York State. He went to a school. None of that really matters. The first kind of interesting thing he did is he was in the Navy.
In the Navy.
Yes.
Sail the seven seas.
In the Navy.
Young man.
He was in the Navy during the Korean War as a diving officer on the USS Kittiwake. And he resigned as a lieutenant junior grade and was discharged other than honorably rather than take a court-martial for being a, and I quote, big old poof.
Oh.
Is that a we found out you're gay, so resign or we'll fire you kind of thing?
Yeah. So he couldn't take an honorable discharge because he was gay. He had to be either leave or they were going to court-martial and put him in jail because of his homosexuality.
Not resign or we'll fire you. Resign or we'll incarcerate you.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, this is still back in the... Well, this is before the days of don't... what is it? Don't ask, don't tell. Where if we find out, you're either court-martialed or you got to get the fuck out of here quick.
Christ.
A small point, and the things that I read about Harvey Milk, a lot of it was based around who he was in a relationship at the time, and it kind of sucked. Because every time it talks about, oh, Harvey Milk was separated from his boyfriend of 6 years. This was his longest relationship. That's scad. I just think it's gross.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that who you're in a relationship with is the most important thing, or like how long you're in those relationships. But of course, because Harvey Milk is a homosexual, that's got to be the first thing that people talk about. So I don't really care how much of a hoe bag he was or wasn't, but kind of was.
Also, like, I know I'm a gross millennial and he's kind of like a gross baby boomer. Is that a generation?
Yeah, born 1930s.
I mean, I don't know, 6 years seems like a good run to me. That seems like a good... Like, it isn't, like, shameful that, like...
Oh, it's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long-term relation. That's an average long-term relationship, I say.
Yeah, but back in his day, you got married at 18, had 30 years of marriage and 2.5 kids and American dream and all that fun stuff.
And divorce was a moral failure.
Out of the military, he worked a bunch of different jobs. He was an insurance actuary. He was a Wall Street researcher, whatever the fuck that is. He did very, very well in those jobs, but his coworkers said his heart wasn't in it. I don't know how you can have your heart in being a Wall Street researcher, but whatever.
Yeah.
Speaking of not liking to just talk about people about their relationships, he got into a new relationship with a guy who got him into politics, working on the conservative Barry Goldwater's campaign for president in 1964.
Wild.
He was a conservative, staunch Republican. Of note, the person that he got into a relationship was 16, and at the time Harvey Milk was 30.
Yuck.
And sorry, when was this?
64. All throughout this time of his life, he was going from being an insurance actuary to a researcher. He moved from New York, where he was raised, into Texas and back into New York again, and just kind of moved all around the place. But things sort of started to actually happen when he moved to San Francisco, specifically to Castro Street.
Nice.
So Castro was a district in San Francisco. Early times, it was sort of working class, blue collar, lots of factory workers. But 60s and 70s, it was the gay village. Like lots of homos.
And I believe continues to be.
Yes, it is the center of gay things. They had so many gays in Castro that they spilled out into other districts surrounding them. That's how many queer folk were in Castro.
Beautiful.
I really wanted to be named after Fidel Castro. It's not. It's named after some guy. So anyway, whole bunch of homos, lots of gays in Castro, including Harvey Milk. Like before, moved to Castro. He opened up a camera shop and then floated off to Texas and went back to New York. And then finally, 60s, he lived with a bunch of flower child kind of hippies and kind of lost some of that conservatism, moved back to Castro, stayed there, ran his camera shop. Little background. This time, oral sex was a felony. Yep.
For both sexes?
I don't think you would ever catch a heterosexual oral sexer, but, you know, gays oral sex, and it's a felony.
Sodomize. I think it's that, the sodomize law.
And buggery.
Yeah, it was part of the sodomy laws. Buggery, sodomy, oral sex, all felonies, so you could go to jail. Like, that means if you get caught sucking dick 3 times, you go to jail for the rest of your life.
3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, 3 strikes, you're out. Hopefully they were good sucks.
Oh, they'd have to be.
It would be really bad if your third one was just like...
It's just kind of like a really half-assed blowjob, and that's what
Just
lands you in
teeth.
jail for life, eh?
Yeah. Another thing that happens a lot, and this is... I don't know if this is just a gay thing. Sex in public parks. Gays are always having sex in public parks. I've done it. I enjoy it. I don't know why. It's just a thing. 1971, 2,800 men were arrested in San Francisco parks for public sex.
2,800?
This was a morals charge and led them all to be labeled as sex offenders and put on a registry. Just for some context, in New York that same year, there were 68. So this is where the queers were, having sex in gay parks. So anyway, Milk ran his store in Castro. Starting running his own store, starts working with the businesses next to him, kind of got into some politics, and soon he decided he was going to run for supervisor of the district of Castro. Supervisor is the same thing as like a city councilor, right? They have we have wards, they have districts.
Right.
There were actually some older queer politicians there, and they all hated him because he was new.
Those other queer politicians, were they still, like, in the closet? Because you described him as the first open, right?
Well, so these were people in politics, never elected to an office because they're queer.
Okay.
But they were still people who had been working on political events for years and years and years and years. And didn't like that this Harvey Milk guy shows up out of nowhere and says, I want to run for supervisor. So they all snubbed him. His platform? Legalize weed, gay rights, and especially get the government out of your sex life. That was pretty much
Love
it.
So like real like libertarian freedom kind of stuff.
I wouldn't say libertarian. Like everyone called him a liberal. And of course like 1970s liberal. Not quite, I want to, you know, throw down the state.
But at the same time, I'm Harvey Milk and I want to recruit you.
My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you. I'm tired of listening to the Anita Bryans twist the language of the Bible to fit their own distorted outlook. But I'm even more tired of the religious leaders of this nation who know it and remain silent. I'm tired of their silence. And I'm tired of the John Briggs talking and lying about false role models. He's lying in his teeth and he knows it. Anita Bryant and John Briggs' unwillingness, their unwillingness to talk about heterosexual violence, their unwillingness to look into their own house. The Briggs can only be defeated if each and every one of you comes out to everyone you know you must.
There's a story about the I want to recruit you part. That was a slogan brought up because everyone at the time was talking about how homosexuals were recruiting young children to be more homosexuals and everyone was pedophiles.
Oh.
So Harvey Milk said, fuck that, I'm Harvey Milk and I want to recruit you.
That's bold.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things. He was great speechwriter. He was really flamboyant, fiery, and people loved listening. When he said, my name is Harvey Milk and I want to recruit you, people cheered.
That's awesome.
That first time he ran for supervisor, he got 16,900 votes, But because of the way they organized their voting, you didn't have to live in the district to vote there. You just voted from wherever you were. And so he lost because a bunch of conservative, shitty white dudes voted more.
Yeah.
If it was internal, he would have actually won by a landslide.
Wow.
But this big push for him to be a supervisor really got him some fame. So he started coalition building. At the time, the Teamsters were pissed off at Coors for... Essentially, Coors didn't want to sign their contract. They said, Teamster for us, drive our shit around, we're not signing any contracts. And a Teamster organizer said, go to gay bars, get them to boycott Coors in Castro. Like, there's hundreds of thousands of people drinking Coors products. Get them to stop. Milk said, sure, hire more gay drivers. The Teamster said, okay. So Milk started going into all the different gay bars and letting them know, hey, like, don't sell Coors stuff. If you sell Coors stuff, we'll boycott that. Let's all boycott Coors. He also went to the Association of Arab and Chinese Grocers, who also stopped serving Coors. And it worked.
Oh, that's neat.
They absolutely boycotted Coors. The Teamsters won. They got their contract signed. And Milk started calling himself the mayor of Castro Street.
Nice.
But now he was like a real important boy. He decided he had to cut off his long hippie hair. He stopped smoking pot. He vowed to never use a gay bathhouse again.
No.
Very important because he was an good gay now.
He's a good gay.
Yeah, before he was a gay of the people, but now he has to be an good gay.
Mm-hmm.
And he started campaigning. He started campaigning again. He wanted to be the mayor, and then he wanted to be a supervisor again. But now he was helped by the Teamsters. He got along with the firefighters. He got construction unions under his belt. He would actually pull in dudes from the street to help work his campaigns, and this was a great... Everyone went, wow, he's getting people on the ground. Turns out he actually just was attracted to those specific people. And so he pulled them into his camera shop and got them to work on his campaign for free.
Yeah, that guy's cute. By the way, I'm Harvey Milk, famous
Right?
politician.
I want to recruit you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to recruit you to my bed, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hey, I guess if you're going to have cute guys do door knocking, like, you know, not the worst. But also still, this running theme of, like, Harvey Milk was kind of gross.
Yeah.
You know, dating 16-year-olds when you're 30,
That's pretty gross.
Staffing yourself by just finding the most attractive people, So about this time, a new mayor came into power, and this was a good mayor. And he worked to get rid of sodomy laws. He actually wanted gay people to not go to jail for having sex with the people they wanted to have sex with.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a good guy. I literally didn't look into him because I'm not that interested in this mayor. But times were changing. San Francisco went from, like I said, this blue collar, lots of factory workers, lots of people in the Navy, to service workers. They actually called it the Manhattanization of San Francisco. This new mayor also called for openly gay police officers to be allowed to serve. And so the police openly wore anti-gay propaganda, said they hated the mayor, and refused to have orders from him.
As you'd expect from law enforcement.
As you'd expect from majority Irish Catholic law enforcement. Yep.
Yeah.
Then some shit happens. September 22nd, 1975. It's a little bit of a side tangent here. President Gerald Ford was fucking around doing presidency things and was almost assassinated. But a bystander, an ex-Marine, jumped out and grabbed the gun and fired it into the pavement. Big ol' hero. His name, Oliver Sipple. Huge hero.
6 years after the murderous rampage of the Manson family, one of its members was still out to get the system, personified by President Gerald Ford. September 5th, Sacramento, California.
All of a sudden, a young woman dressed in a red flowing gown jumped at the president, lunged at him, and we're told she had a gun in her hand. A Secret Service.
The White House press office has now identified the woman as Lynn Ellis Fromm, 26 years old, of Sacramento, and they say that she is linked with the Charles Manson family.
Secret Service agent Larry Boondorf was the man who stopped her.
I noticed a hand coming up very low and had something in it.
The gun was about 2 feet from the president.
I saw a hand coming up behind several others in the front row, and obviously there was a gun in that hand.
We interrupt this program to bring you the following special report from ABC News.
This is the latest on the apparent attempt to fire a gun at President Ford.
He was right. It was the latest, but not the last. 3 weeks later, a rerun. On September 22nd, in another California town, San Francisco, another radical, another gun, the same president.
The president is now on Air Force One, somewhere over the Midwest, a little more than an hour to go before he lands in Washington. Mr. Ford is all right. He had a close call in San Francisco earlier today when a 45-year-old woman, Sarah Moore, allegedly tried to shoot him. She will be arraigned in San Francisco within the hour in the attempted assassination. For details on what happened there, here is ABC White House correspondent Steve Bell.
It happened as the president was leaving the St. Francis Hotel after his last scheduled appearance. The president appeared stunned momentarily, but he was not hit. He was quickly pushed into a crouching position, into his limousine, and in moments the motorcade was underway, rushing away from the trouble area toward the airport. The hero of the hour, a San Francisco policeman named Joseph Curry. It was he who saw the gun in a woman's hands moments before she had a chance to fire. He struck her arm just as the gun went off, and the bullet crashed into the pavement. The woman was quickly identified as Sarah Jean Moore, 45 years old, a known political activist in the San Francisco area. She had been part of that People in Need program, the massive food giveaway organized last year as part of the effort to free Patricia Hearst after she had first been kidnapped.
Sarah Jane Moore received a life sentence for the attempted assassination, but she was released on parole in 2007, and Sarah Jane Moore is now speaking out and joins us this morning. What drove you to want to try to assassinate President Ford?
Well, everybody asks that, and the thing is that everybody was talking about it. They say, where did you get the idea? I don't know about the rest of the country, but in San Francisco, people were saying this all the time. Number one, we elect our presidents, we don't appoint them. And Gerald Ford was appointed, and he was appointed by a crook, if you will pardon the expression. It was partly that there were other people who had talked about it, who I thought were much more important to what we were thinking of as the revolution, and we really truly thought there was going to be one. And I thought somebody like me, I was a nobody, it would be better coming from somebody like me and not destroying these people who I felt were leaders, and if they did this, it would destroy their leadership.
So you served more than 30 years in prison. You got out in 2000.
More than 32 years.
More than 32 years. You got out of prison in 2007. You then were given 5 years of parole. Are you still on parole?
Yes, I am. The rules say that after 5 years of clear conduct, it's like your mandatory release. You're supposed to be released from parole. And I am now 7 years of clear conduct and have yet to be released from parole.
And why is that? I mean, I believe that you have gone on and proven as best you can to the court that you are now an upstanding citizen. You've turned over a new leaf. So what do they tell you?
Well, I was always a pretty good citizen. Let's not talk about turning over a new leaf. The first time that they turned me down, I was shocked because one would have thought the incident had happened the day before. The way they talked about me, and I was in total shock. And they repeated much the same this time. They're supposed to release you unless they feel that you're going to commit another offense. And I don't know what offense I would commit, jaywalking perhaps?
But you tried to kill the President of the United States back then.
Yes, but it makes it sound like I was a totally different person, and I was pretty much the person I am now. Had gotten into something over my head, I will admit that. Had quit listening to reason. So for a little while, I was a different person. But in terms of being your ordinary, normal citizen who gets up and goes to work, and I think the most, the only criminal I'd had before I'd gotten a ticket for jaywalking.
Sarah Jane Moore's motives were confused. Her purpose was not.
I knew that that's the only shot I would have was a headshot. He came out, looked right at me, and after I fired the shot, he stopped. Cold, and I did have time for a second shot, had never planned for a second shot, had practiced and was psyched for one shot.
One shot might have done it if it hadn't been for a man who almost wasn't there. Vietnam veteran Oliver Semple just happened to be downtown.
I said, well, the guy's from Michigan. I've never seen him in person. I'll stick around to see him, if I can see what he looks like. Everybody started pushing everybody. For some strange reason, I looked down, and I had seen Sarah Jane Moore go in her purse and pull a revolver. I yelled, the bitch has got a gun. before I made the lunge for it, as the trigger was going off. I grabbed her, and about 10 agents and 20 policemen were on us all, like, just like that.
He didn't want to be called a hero. He wanted no recognition because Oliver Sipple was gay. And he knew if people knew who he was, someone would figure out that he's gay, and his life would be ruined. Harvey Milk happened to know Sipple. Sipple was a friend of one of his exes. And Harvey Milk thought, it would be really good to know that a gay person saved the president. So he called the newspaper.
Oh, shit.
The San Francisco Chronicle wrote an article and exposed Sipple as both a gay and a friend of Milk. National papers took it up. Sipple's mom was a Baptist, a very, very big Baptist, and disowned him. Sipple sued the Chronicle, even though he tried to still keep everything private. And as a bigger slap in the face after this, Sipple got a simple thank you note from the president, where normally people that saved the president's life would be invited to the White House. Harvey Milk specifically said it was because he was a homosexual that they only sent him a note instead.
Was Harvey, naive? He doesn't seem like a dumb guy. Why did he choose to do that?
Sounds really calculated and self-serving.
Yeah. Harvey Milk was of the opinion that people should not be in the closet, because by being in the closet, you were necessarily hiding how many people were actually gay or queer or what have you. So his idea was that everyone should be out of the closet. He had lots of campaigns where it was, come out to your parents. And if your parents kick you out, come down to San Francisco and come to Castro and we'll help you.
To the gay community all over this state, my message to you is, so far a lot of people joined us and rejected Proposition 6, and now we owe them something. We owe them to continue the education campaign that took place. We must destroy the myths once and for all, shatter them. We must continue to speak out, and most importantly, every gay person must come out. As difficult as it is, you must tell your immediate family, you must tell your relatives, you must tell your friends if indeed they are your friends, you must tell your neighbors, you must tell the people you work with, you must tell the people in the stores you shop in, once they realize that we are indeed their children and we are indeed everywhere, every myth, every lie, every innuendo will be destroyed once and for all. And once you do, you will feel so much better.
It's nice that he eked out a place in his life where he could feel open about expressing himself, being homosexual, but not everybody has that privilege. Not everybody can be that open without consequences, without fucking major things up in their life.
Well, and it's not his choice to come out for anyone.
Yeah.
It's not his job.
Yeah. I fully maintain that Harvey Milk was a pioneer and kind of a shitty dude.
Yeah.
Dating young guys, pulling cute boys off the street to work in his campaign, outing veterans that don't want to be outed. For all the good he did a lot of harm.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's people for you, right? We all kind of suck.
Complex figures, complex people.
Complex life, complex world.
Yeah.
Yep. Including the hosts. We're not perfect.
No.
I'm kind of shitty.
The Soundboard Demon's real great, though. He's my favorite. I love him so much. He is the best. Everyone should go on our Patreon and give us money for the Soundboard Demon.
Cough, cough.
Speaking of campaigns, Harvey Milk ran for state legislature, and he failed miserably. And there's a whole bunch of controversy, but it's all boring politics shit, and I don't really care.
Fair.
It's all just the normal, he tried to do a thing, but the political people at the top didn't like it, so they all pulled support from him and told him that they wouldn't support him, but then these people would support him, and I didn't care. I kind of glazed over. Again, he's trying to organize, he's trying to get into some place of power to help people. Instead of going to legislature, he actually ended up working for the city in permits. But because of the supervisors and the other people that worked at the city, they got him fired. As would happen, because he's a gay, and he gets fired for things, and he's loud and obnoxious. It was about this time where he was thinking about leaving politics. He was getting into his 40s or late 40s, didn't really want to do it anymore, and figured one last campaign. 1976, supervisor, and he won. He was sworn in, making national news. In that same year, he was a supervisor with a single mother, a Chinese American, and an African American woman. All firsts for supervisors in San Francisco.
Damn.
One of the first bills that he worked on that was passed very quickly was a bill that outlawed discrimination based off of sexual orientation. It went through the city hall, and it went to the mayor, and it got signed. It was even signed with a light blue pen that Harvey Milk gave to the mayor for that specific occasion.
Is that special? Is that significant?
It's gayer, I guess.
It's a special pen that Harvey gave to the
Special.
guy.
Well, I guess the mayor was willing to make that connection to Harvey, which says something.
Yeah, and it shows that like San Francisco was changing. Again, this is a mayor that had worked on anti-sodomy or getting rid of the anti-sodomy legislation. So, you know, good things are going on.
San Francisco today is known for being pretty gay. This was kind of in a time when that was still being eked out in the city, eh?
There's kind of a funny reason why it's so gay.
Yeah.
When sailors came back from wars, they went to ports, obviously, because that's where ships are. San Francisco is a big, big port, and when all these gays after the wars got kicked out for being gay, well, they weren't going to go home to their probably homophobic parents and other people that didn't love them, so they just stayed in San Francisco. It's part of the reason there's so many gays in San Francisco, because they all got kicked out of the Navy. In that year that he was brought in as a supervisor, he also campaigned on dog shit.
Supervisor Milk took to the grassy lawn at Dubose Park this afternoon to publicize the new law. Under the ordinance, dog lovers who don't clean up can be fined.
I think what happened is what happened in New York, that people use their own ingenuity, their own ideas, their own concepts. Some people are using pie tins, some people are using the Wall Street Journal, and other people are using doggy-doos and shovels.
Milk put his foot down to emphasize that the city intends to enforce, and you guessed it, in Supervisor Milk's words, this really is the bottom line.
One of the biggest complaints of everyone in San Francisco was there's dog shit everywhere. Littering the streets. You'd just step in it constantly. So Milk wrote legislation that you had to clean up after your pets like every other place and put a city ordinance in, and it worked. He actually went and brought the press to a park to say, yes, we have this ordinance now, you have to pick up your stuff. And in walking up to the dais, he stepped in dog shit. There's this great moment of the news where he steps in dog shit and slips in it and goes, well, look, this is great because this ordinance is coming out. And it looked like it was this serendipitous moment when in reality he had been walking around that park for about an hour trying to find a piece of dog shit that he could set up the dais by so that he could do the candles.
Nice. Framing. It's all about framing.
It's what Milk was like. He was a performer, right? He wanted people to think, oh wow, he slipped in dog shit and he's going to talk about dog shit. What a coincidence.
And like it's a good political decision too, because people will see you getting stuff done. From the little I've read about him, it seems like that was a habit of him doing politics for a lot of his jobs, is he would go to his constituents, be like, hey, what is everybody pissed off about? Okay, well, let's work on that. And at that time was dog shit, and he took care of the dog shit problem, and then he moved on to the next thing.
Part of what he did, and part of what was really revolutionary about him, is all these supervisors would get in and they'd be factory workers, so they would work on factory legislation, and they'd be police officers, so they work on police reforms and things like that. But Harvey was like, we need more stop signs in Castro. So he put 50 new stop signs in Castro for safety. He had his people out filling potholes in Castro all the time because people don't care about, unless you're a factory owner, factory worker, you don't care about factory legislation. Everyone hates potholes. Everyone hates dog shit. Everyone wants stop signs for dangerous streets. I mean, unless you're in Saskatoon, where any amount of traffic control makes the conservatives freak the fuck out.
Oh, don't get me started about those compost bins.
Oh, no. Speed humps.
We're all fans of speed humps around here.
Yep.
The other big thing that happened while he was a supervisor is a person who was formerly running for governor of California, a man named John Briggs, had an initiative, and it looked like it was going to win. And it was an initiative for the ability to fire any gay teachers or any public employees that openly supported gay rights.
Gross.
Wow.
Prop 6.
Holy. I mean, that sounds shocking, but there's similar bills being cooked up in Florida right now that are not that far off.
Oh, yeah. History is definitely rhyming in these cases.
It's repeating.
And it was looking like it was going to go ahead. And Milk attended every one of John Briggs's talks to just tell people, like, no, this is horseshit. I'm a public official. I'm a gay. This does nothing. He campaigned all across California. He campaigned all across America to the point where he got the most amount of people to date to come to the San Francisco Pride. They figure between 250,000 and 375,000 people attended San Francisco Pride that year.
Jesus.
A lot of which held Say No to Prop 6 signs.
What's the population of Saskatoon?
About 300K.
Yeah, so that's if all of Saskatoon showed up.
Yeah, it's a small city came out to San Francisco to say, don't make this law happen. Even former Governor Ronald from my cold dead hands Reagan was against it. Even the current president, Jimothy Carter. I was a little surprised that Reagan wasn't like, it's fine, get rid of him.
I'm less surprised about Carter, though. He seemed like a decent man.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he was still gross, though.
I think all the presidents are gross. And not thanks to Harvey Milk's work, because I'm sure there's more and more to it, but that initiative lost, so it did not come into power, 41 to 58 by 1.1 million votes.
Wow.
So it was good. That was a good thing.
I mean, I'm sure he moved the needle. Probably, likely significantly.
A lot of people give him a lot of credit for making, 375,000 people coming to San Francisco to protest. That's gonna make a dent.
Yeah, no kidding.
Things were going good for Harvey Milk. He was doing well in his job. There's always more to this. I've glossed over many, many things, including other people in this story. So things like there's a current Senator Dianne Feinstein. She was actually a supervisor with Harvey Milk. It was her first political job that I could see, at least on their Wikipedia page. And there's this other guy named Dan White. So on November 10th, 1978, this other supervisor, Dan White, resigned from his position as supervisor because the amount of money, about $9,000 a year, was not enough to live off of. So he resigned. And then he came back and said he wanted his job back a couple days later. The mayor said, sure, come on back, Dan. But the other supervisors, Milk included, told him no, don't let him back. He resigned.
You resigned. So it's a by-election now.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. So the mayor had agreed to bring him back, and then he unagreed to bring him back. That happened. On March 27th, on the day that the mayor was going to announce Dan's resignation, Dan White bypassed security by entering through a basement window with his police-issued revolver. He walked into the mayor's office and shot the mayor dead with 2 shots.
Whoa.
1 shot, sorry. People started to panic. He walked down the hall towards his old office, Dan's, where he found Harvey Milk. And he asked Milk to step inside his office and talk to him quick. Milk did. Moments later, Dianne Feinstein, the other supervisor, heard 5 shots.
Oh, shit.
She called the police and ran towards Dan's office and found Harvey Milk shot 5 times, including twice in the head, laying in a puddle of blood. Milk was 48, the mayor was 49.
Wow.
Whoa.
I believe it was like this. Dan White was an unusual individual and quite perceptive, and knew that if he came through the metal detectors that he would have been stopped.
So he comes up from the basement or the ground floor.
No, you're correct. At the time, he came up from the basement.
And came here.
And this was the offices of the Board of Supervisors. All 11 supervisors were in one open office in little cubicles in Harvey Milk's desk. I mean, Harvey was shot at his desk.
We're back, and one of the hardest things in this job is to report news like this. We have just gotten news across the wire that both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot, and reports are that they have been killed. the reports are very sketchy. Both men have evidently been taken to local hospitals, and it's going to be extremely difficult to continue our interview. We're going to have to do that. Most of you, please stay tuned to your stations, your radio stations. I'm sure they will be having news about what is happening. Unfortunately, that's all we have at this point. Okay. Under duress, we shall continue. I'd like to find out from you, let's say a child was watching right now and had just heard that, that their mayor and that their supervisor had been killed. Do you think that there would be anything that you would recommend for parents to do?
As we were sitting here listening to this terrible news, it recalled the Kennedy assassination, and I think for the first time, children of America were exposed to death, the irreversibility of death.
And it was one of the hardest moments, if not the hardest moment of my life, plus the year that followed, and maybe 2 years that followed, were the hardest years of my political life. It was a devastating moment. For San Francisco, it was a day of infamy. I think we were all very proud of the fact that San Francisco was the city to elect the first openly gay supervisor. So there was an element of pride in that. George Moscone was a popular and wonderful mayor. You could have differences with a mayor, but George had lived a life. He lived it fully. He lived it with abundanza. He was a very attractive person. And to see a colleague of mine who I worked with and knew clean his gun, come through avoid the magnetometers, crawl in through a window in the basement, come up, shoot the mayor, cross City Hall, go right by myself sitting at my desk calling out to him, shoot Harvey, and come by and leave. Now those are the barest facts. It was unfathomable and very, very difficult to absorb. George Moscone was very lucky. He has a wonderful wife. She's got a warm heart and a streak of steel down her back, and she's been able to carry on really in the best sense as a matriarch of that family. And she's gone through some very hard things in her life. But what it did to that family is obviously enormous. What it did to Harvey's family is obviously enormous. But what it did to the city was really my problem. And what it did to the city was divide it right down the middle, was create a tension, an apprehension, some of it sorrow, some of it hate, very visceral emotions that you don't usually see all came to the surface and bubbled up at that time.
The mayor that didn't let him come back, 1 bullet. Harvey Milk, that queer, 5 bullets, 2 in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dan White went to trial. They caught him. They figured out it was him. Probably wasn't very hard. November 19th, not too long afterwards, Jonestown. 900 people committed suicide in Guyana, in the People's Temple. Dan White was heard to remark, "You see that? One day I'm the front page, and the next I'm swept right off."
Gross.
Jeez.
So this is the kind of guy that Dan White was.
Like, even if you believe that, some tact fella. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Police at the time openly wore shirts while on patrol that said "Free Dan White."
Yuck.
Knowing what, like, I'm trying to, they know what he did?
They just killed that queer, and I can't believe that they would make that perfect man, Dan White, not get his job.
Well, it's like those cops wearing the "I can breathe" shirts. Like, it's a fucking thing cops always do.
Yeah.
An undersheriff in San Francisco said, "The more I observed what went on in that jail, the more I began to stop seeing what Dan White did as an act of an individual and began to see it as a political act in a political movement." Again, what Dan did was walk in and murder in cold blood the mayor and Harvey. Yeah. White never showed any remorse for his actions. The only time he showed any emotion was a call from his mother where he did cry.
Christ.
That jury was made up of mainly Catholic white people. Gays and all ethnic minorities that were asked to be on the jury were excluded by the council.
Yeah.
Jurors cried when Dan White testified at how it made him feel that he didn't get his job back.
Holy fuck.
You can't murder a guy and come back.
Dan's lawyer argued that he wasn't culpable because good people, fine people with fine backgrounds simply don't kill people in cold blood.
Oh, God.
Then who the fuck else killed them?
And that the politicos in the San Francisco City Hall manipulated him into being a murderer.
The mind virus.
This is Twinkie the Kid. Ever wonder how they get that creamy filling into the middle of a Twinkie's cake? Well, these kids have some pretty good ideas.
First, they put down the creamy filling, then they bake the cake all around. See, they got this big tube full of the stuff, and they just squish it in. It's just born there.
Hostess Twinkies cakes, fruit pies, and cupcakes. Yahoo! The fresh snacks with a snack in the middle.
They also had a point to say just how crazy he was. Dan White was known to be very health conscious and a healthy eater, but the day before he killed these two people, he binged and he ate a fuckload of Twinkies.
Yes, the Twinkie defense.
The Twinkie defense. The press did label it the Twinkie defense. That's how crazy this man was. He'd stopped eating his carrots and ate Twinkies. Drove him nuts, made him kill people.
Daniel James White is the first person in San Francisco to be charged under the new death penalty statute. White, who surrendered himself to Northern Station, has been charged with the felony of willfully, unlawfully, and with malice aforethought, murdering George Moscone and Harvey Milk.
Both victims, Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk, were duly elected officials, and the killing of them was in retaliation of and to prevent them from carrying out their public duties.
Dan White, a strong law and order man, was an ardent supporter of Proposition 7 in the election just 3 weeks ago. District Attorney Joe Freitas and Supervisor Harvey Milk campaigned hard to defeat the new Death Penalty Act. And now, Freitas must use it to prosecute the murder of Milk and Mayor Moscone.
We had a 24-hour security watch on him, and because he's over on the security sick bay section, and it's a single cell, and so we have a deputy sitting right outside 24 hours. We change the deputy every hour.
How's he been eating?
Well, he ate breakfast this morning at 6:30. He had bacon, eggs, toast, grits, coffee, and so he ate all of his breakfast.
If you'd been in the courtroom for the past 3 weeks, you'd know tonight that Dan White's jury delivered a careful verdict based on what they had heard in the courtroom. It began with the anguished tape recording of Dan White's confession, a bit of evidence terribly valuable to the defense, but presented by the prosecution. The tape set the emotional tone for the trial. No one in the courtroom could hear that tape and not feel some empathy for White. The jury was certainly no exception. Each day, White's wife, Marianne, sat in the front row, tearfully talking about the man she loved whose moods she didn't understand. Never, in those 3 weeks, was the jury reminded, in anything but a coldly analytic manner, of the two men who died, Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. Late today, District Attorney Joseph Freitas, who guided the prosecution, admitted emotion had impressed the jury. And the jury heard 5 psychiatrists say that Dan White had lost control of his emotions when he killed the mayor and Harvey Milk, lost them to the extent that he couldn't have premeditated the killings or harbored malice toward his victims, states of mind required for murder convictions. But the prosecution presented only 1 psychiatrist, and he hadn't done his job. What's more, the prosecution apparently didn't ask him to do more, and he fell victim to a strong cross-examination by the defense. The jury had heard several witnesses to his good character, among them a prosecution witness, Homicide Inspector Frank Falzon, a longtime friend of White's, who on cross-examination said that White was, quote, a man among men. In the end, a young lawyer's career was made when Douglas Schmidt persuaded a jury to knock down what the prosecution originally thought was a certain death penalty case, knocked it down to a verdict of voluntary manslaughter.
I'm pleased that the jury was able to put aside the emotion of
who was killed and look at the facts and be objective about it, and I think they were. But, God, that's not going to help the Moscone family, and that's not going to help all of the people that loved Harvey Milk, and I'm sure there are a lot of them.
Obviously, we all know what happens next. Acquitted, did not do first-degree murder, as they were found. Was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter on both counts, sentenced to 7 2/3 years, but if he was a good boy in jail, it'd only be 5. And he sobbed upon hearing people were not happy that he was going to jail at all.
Wow.
Oh no, the consequences of his actions. Not even the consequences of his actions.
Like a real watered down consequences of his actions.
For murdering 2 people in cold blood.
Got 5 years in jail.
Yeah, like
a slap in the wrist.
Yeah.
Like you show up with a gun. You know,
he's
gun
snuck,
and ammo. And
he snuck past security by
Like,
going
that's-
through a basement window.
That's premeditation.
That's premeditated. Like you knew what the fuck you were doing when you went in there.
So, in the aftermath of this trial happening, the acting mayor, Dianne Feinstein, and 2 supervisors condemned it. They said it was absolutely ridiculous. And a mob of 3,000 queers, people
Burn
that
it
weren't,
down.
but marched on City Hall and threw rocks.
Oh.
Harvey Milk's friends and aides and colleagues and people that loved him tried to stop the rioters, but it didn't happen. When asked by reporters, the rioters said, just tell them we ate too many fucking Twinkies. That's why we're rioting. In this case, luckily, the police were told not to intervene. Just let them peter out.
Let's get out of here. Turn the light on. Let's get out of here. Let's go, Mary.
About the riots, I'd say that Dan White was let free because one of the people he murdered was a homosexual. If Dan White had not killed a homosexual, he would have gone to the gas chamber. But because he killed a homosexual, the jury, I believe, did not find him guilty. They essentially said it's all right to kill a homosexual, and that's why there was a riot.
But also that night, the police entered a well-known gay bar called the Elephant Walk and beat everyone that was in there, just randomly. Entire random acts of violence. The district attorney, Joseph Freitas, tried to explain like how this all happened because he was part of the investigation for Dan White. He did say that he really felt sorry for Dan and that he had forgot to ask the investigator, who was Dan White's friend from the Navy or his military time. He forgot to ask about the confession that Dan had written and signed. Didn't say anything about biases. And really enjoyed that the police treated Dan so well while he was in custody. And he never once called any police to the stand during that trial to say, like, does this make sense? Because he didn't want to embarrass the police.
Yuck.
Disgusting.
He seems to have his priorities in order.
Yeah, that justice system really working great for the people. Right?
Oh.
After the murders, San Francisco actually suspended having specific supervisors for specific districts, saying that it caused too much infighting in the city. People tried to get it back a bunch of times, and in the 90s they did bring back specific counselors for specific areas. There were also California law reforms that diminished capacity, like they had said Dan White had, is no longer a defense, but you can use it for sentencing. So if someone has diminished capacity and they kill someone, you can't just say they weren't culpable, but you can say maybe they shouldn't get life. Maybe they should only get 20 years. Lastly on that, Dan White served his 5 years and was released in January of 1984.
That was even like before I was born.
Yeah.
In October of 1985, Dan White was found dead in a running car in his ex-wife's garage. And his lawyer told the press that he was distraught at losing his family over the whole thing. That's why he did it.
So sad.
So sad. Anyways.
Yeah, so sad. Anyway, I'm not happy it happened. I'm never happy when someone's dead.
I'm a little happy.
I'm a little happy about it.
Yeah. Mostly distraught at society.
So what's Milk's legacy? Obviously some good shit for gay people. More inclusion, laws to end discrimination based on their gayness.
Not stepping in dog shit all the goddamn time.
Not stepping in dog shit. Honestly, one of the big things, and when you look past the just Harvey Milk was a queer person, he really wanted neighborhoods to work well. His idea for a neighborhood was that each neighborhood, each district, should offer all the services that its residents needed.
Yeah.
And he was an effective politician. Like, a politician is somebody who can get people to believe in them as like a person who can deliver what they want. And people followed Harvey. People seemed to trust Harvey. Hell, he could pull randoms off the street and he could get them to trust him right away.
Yep. Only if they're cute, though.
Yeah.
And of course, like, he took those small problems seriously. The dog shit bill. A journalist named Randy Schultz, which is a funny name, did say some would claim Harvey was a socialist or various other sorts of ideologues. But in reality, Harvey's political philosophy was never more complicated than the issue of dog shit. Government should solve people's basic problems.
Yeah.
2 things named after him, 3 things kind of. There is a public square in Castro now called Harvey Milk Plaza. They fly a pride flag all year round. There is actually a replenishment oiler in the U.S. Navy named the USNS Harvey Milk, which is kind of weird because they kicked him out.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, the Navy is set to christen its latest ship, honoring the late civil rights leader Harvey Milk. The future USNS Harvey Milk is the second ship in the Navy's John Lewis class of fleet replenishment oilers that will serve to refuel Navy ships at sea. Tomorrow morning's ceremonial address will be delivered by Milk's nephew, Stuart Milk, with remarks from other Navy leaders as well. The John Lewis class of ships are planned to be named after notable civil rights leaders and activists. Harvey Milk served in the Navy during the Korean War and broke barriers, becoming the first openly gay elected official in California in 1977 before he was shot and killed in 1978.
And that's my Happy Pride Harvey Milk episode. I have missed many, many things. I could have gone more into depth, but that's what I got.
If you'd like to know more, the internet exists.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Quick little overview, but we'll go from there. For Occultae Veritatis, I've been Arthur. Joining me was...
Sage Murray.
Leon Pilger.
Ood Gallifrey.
Richard Bigley.
And Lord Loki.
And since this is coming out on Pride Week, our local Pride Week, Happy Pride.
Yeah,
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Be gay. That's
Be
the order.
happy.
Suck a dick for Jesus.
Suck a dick for Jesus.
Suck all the dicks for Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus wanted you to suck dick.
Or if you're not into that, then don't suck a dick for Jesus.
Yeah, you don't have to, but like it is.
Slap your clams together till pearls fall out.
All of those orders were issued by Jesus. I know, I have lunch with him.
Okay, bye.
Good night.
Good. Until what are the pearls? Is that?